Thank you very much. Mr. Altman.
If you'd like to repeat after me, please. I do solemnly,
I do solemnly,
sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
Thank you, please.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanders, give us your full name, if you would, please.
Calvin Scott Sanders.
Mr. Sanders, I'm going to ask you just a few questions to begin with by way of introduction. Do you remember now when it was you first became or applied for the position of DCO at Brook House?
I don't remember when I applied for it, but I started my training in January 2017.
Right, I think we're going to have trouble hearing you. Actually, can we put, Mr. Sanders, either if you can move forward or pull the microphones back, please. Thank you. Well, thank you. And what did you just tell us? 20 January 17, you started your training.
Yes.
I'm going to put a document up on screen, and you'll see the screen to your left in front of you, CJS 006653, tab 2, chair for you.
Thank you.
And if we go to page 3 when we get there. Mr. Sanders, as I think you know, Mr. Connolly, do you remember John Connolly? He was a trainer, CNR trainer. He gave evidence to us a couple of days ago. And he recalled an officer who failed his CNR part of the course to begin with. Unable to recall the name, but said that the officer ripped his helmet off. And if we look on your training record, this is a use of force referral form dated the 24th of February of 2017. Do you see the box at the bottom in handwriting, helmet, thrown in anger, loss of control? Did you find control and restraint a bit difficult?
No, if you spoke to Sean Connie, I was actually top of the class during CNR. Now, again, what they say is I lost anger, loss of control. But what they don't tell you is that during a training they teach you to remove all weapons. Now the helmet I didn't take off, it was taken off by the acting detainee.
Yeah.
So it came off during a struggle. So it
see.
wasn't thrown in anger, it was thrown because they teach you to remove all weapons in the room. So it was an attempt to remove a use of weapon which could potentially be a weapon.
Yeah. But as a result of it, and together with perhaps other factors, did you fail that part of the course?
Yes.
Did you not protest, given what you just told us, that you'd failed unfairly?
Well, again, they allowed me the chance to retake it, which I then passed afterwards. So.
Yeah. Connolly told us that if a person failed the CNR element of their initial training, they'd have no detainee contact until they took another week's control and restraint training. So that's what you had to do. And if we look on page 1 of the same document, please, so if we go to the beginning of it, and you'll see it again up on screen, you'll see the date, the 6th of March 2017, and we scroll to the bottom. On this occasion, it looks like you achieved the competence level achieved with a yes. So you were able then to become a fully fledged detention or detainee custody officer, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If we go to page 2, forgive me, page 4, not page 2, page 4. This goes back to the original use of force referral form from February. There are a couple of things I just want to ask you about, because other aspects of the your initial training in control and restraint were noted up as moments. This is at the top of withdrawal following scenario, appeared agitated and unwilling to communicate issues. Do you agree with that?
There's a lot of factors going on. So obviously it was a stressful environment and they put you in real life scenarios. Now that was my first ever position, like job, where I'd come into like a physical contact.
What had you done before applying to G4S?
Before that I was a civil enforcement officer, so in layman's terms as a traffic warden.
So completely different
Yeah, so
career.
this is my first ever career in a sort of like
Yeah, security type of
Yeah.
job. And then a little further down, under the heading Teamwork and Communication, in the central box, struggled a little under pressure. Do you think that was fair?
I think again, like there's other aspects that in day-to-day life I'm good with pressure, but it's like I had things going on in my home life, you know, and it's just like it's all coming together, and
Yeah.
some of the team, as you weren't exactly like being like a team, you know, it's just like
Yeah. I mean, the observation on page 4, do you see the second box in which there's some handwriting? Clearly has a lot going on at the moment. And from what you've told us, that sounds about right. So this was a bad time for you.
yeah.
Did those issues sort themselves out eventually? I don't want to know what they are, Mr. Sanders. I'm not going to pry, and they're not material. But did they sort themselves out once you passed the course, do you think?
Eventually, but again, my life's full of struggles, and you know, but it's only I have to deal with it myself, you know, and it's just like.
So you said your life was full of struggles, and you had to deal with it yourself. Looking back now, do you think, whatever those struggles were, that this was the right job for Kelvin Sanders?
I got into it because, you know, like I wanted to sort of like help people, you know. So I know obviously I made up some things that I shouldn't have, but the fact remains the same, you know. After that, I got into security to still help people, you know. And I'm a dog trainer now, and again I do that because I want to help make people's lives better, you know. But because dogs are misunderstood, you know, that's the initial thought of it. So the prospect's still the same, but yes, working in the detention centre is probably something I wouldn't do again.
No. Now, that's some background to you, Mr. Sanders, and I want to ask you about events on the 24th of April, and I want to put up another document now, please. Tab 5, Chair. CJS 001085, please, at page 3. In fact, let's start at page 2 so we can put it in context. You were asked to do on the 24th of April constant observations on a detainee we know as D1527. And if we scroll towards the bottom of this page, you look on screen, you will recognise this document because these are the entries which are made on a record form of an individual who's being supervised. And at 3:15 that afternoon, 15:15, and then at 15:20, let me summarise those two entries, one made by Nathan Ring and the other by Gary Croucher. At that point, D1527 tried to self-harm, if not attempt suicide, by putting a ligature around his neck. It was seen, it was removed, and it came about because he had come off Sea Wing and wanted to go back and was worried about his possessions. So that was the background, and when Nathan Ring told him that that wasn't possible, the result was he self-harmed in the way I've just described. So that's 3:15 that afternoon, then 3:20, and if we go then to the top of the next page, at 15:37 he refused to engage with healthcare, and then at 15:40 he was spoken to, it appears, by DCO Croucher, still trying to get him to change rooms, and then at 15:40 you came on duty to do your stint of constant observations. Do you think you must have known, if not read the earlier entries when you came on duty, so you knew what he had done not very long before you came on?
The thing is, the one I got on there, I didn't really look back at previous comments. No. I just got there, sat there, and just told to observe him.
So are you saying that you didn't appreciate what had happened?
So I got told of what had been going on, and he was he came from Sea Wing, but it wasn't told to me that his position wasn't allowed to him. You know, it's just I was just told that he's feeling suicidal, and I was just keeping an eye on him.
That's the important thing. Yeah. You know, the underlying reason maybe you didn't realise But what I'm really driving at, because I think we do have some footage which I think shows you in the area of that particular room at around the time actually he did what he did, and Nathan Ring and others were around, including Michelle Brown, and Jan Pashali turns up. But that's really not the issue, what he wanted or why he self-harmed. But did you understand he was suicidal?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, you know, I was there to like help him. You know, it's like I understand that the footage makes it out that had ill intentions, which I didn't. You know, because if you have all the footage, you would notice that the conversation I had with the DCO at the time.
Mr. Sanders, forgive me. Let me just stop you. I'm talking about different footage.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure
Yeah,
it's footage.
I'm talking about the same footage where it says in the footage, the only footage they show, where it says I'll get through to him eventually. This is the footage I'm referring to.
It's not that footage I'm talking about.
Okay.
There's some other footage at around 3:15,
Yeah.
just after he had attempted to take his life with a ligature, where the CCTV, it's CCTV footage, not Callum Tully footage, which shows individuals around the room at the time the ligature was taken off. You don't see it happening, but you see down, if you can imagine, looking down on the room. And if my memory serves me, you are somewhere on the landing area.
Yeah, so I was on Ewing at the time. I do
Yeah.
recall that incident, but
Right.
again, I didn't know the incidents before he came onto Ewing.
Fine,
That's
okay.
what I was trying to get at.
Right. No, I'm interested in this particular incident, whether you actually knew he had that half an hour before you came on duty, whether you realised he put a ligature around his neck.
No, yes, again, because I know that there's like a it's not like a struggle, but again, they
Yeah.
had to
So
sort
you
of take
knew
off.
the basics.
Yeah.
Fine. That's all I want to know. And then let's just look at your entries. At 15:40, DCO Calvin Sanders doing constant OBS or OB or OB on D1527 appears to be lying on his front with his head buried in his arms. 10 minutes later, 1550 is still lying on his front, appears to be crying. Asked him what was wrong, no response. Is that still your handwriting, Mr. Sanders, 1550?
Yes. It changes rapidly.
Do you think it's yours or somebody
No,
else's?
that's definitely mine.
What did you say? Definitely yours.
Definitely mine.
At 15:52, 2 minutes later, D1527 was banging his head on the base of his bed repeatedly. I went in to prevent him doing any further damage. That's at 15:52. So should we understand, Mr. Sanders, assuming that's your entry, that you actually unlocked the door and went in?
The door was already unlocked. The door has always stayed open.
Literally, the door was open.
Yeah, so we sit at the front door in the chair, literally just placed at the front door. We look in. That. So the door was always open.
Right. And was he in E7 at the time with the big viewing panel, or
So
a different room?
The one that he was in was the one right next to the office. So where you got the DCO office, here's
Yeah.
a room right next to it.
So that would not be the one with the big viewing panel, but a smaller viewing panel?
I really
You
can't remember.
All right. And then at 16:03 is trying to drive his index either side, and presumably meant finger, either side of his neck with extreme pressure. I've asked him to stop, or I will place my hands, and then you cross through 3 words, and add his hands to pull them away to prevent him injuring himself. 16:16 keeps banging his head on the base of his bed. I'm trying to talk him out of it and to sit up and talk to me so I can try and help. A previous word having been crossed through, perhaps for a misspelling. 16:35 continues to cry with his head on the base of the bed. 16:47 has engaged in conversation and is now talking to me, wishes to go to the mosque. 17:05, Operations Manager Kaz Dance-Jones has come into his room to see what's wrong. This is still your handwriting, I take it, Mr. Sanders. And then over the page to page 4, I think 3 more entries are yours. Tell me if I'm right as we go through. At 5:15, 17:15, DCM Stuart Povey came to speak to D1527 as he wishes to move back to C Wing. 17:34 appears to be calm now and is engaging in more depth conversation. And then 17:42 have tried in persuading 1527 to eat, but says he won't eat unless he goes back to C Wing, then he will eat. So I stopped there because the next entry is clearly DCO copying. All of those entries I've just read then, you're happy are yours, yeah? And out of interest, did you also know, I mean, you knew about the attempted suicide, you've told us that much. Did you also know that he had refused food from about the 19th of April?
I weren't until it was mentioned to me when I came on and I took over that he hadn't eaten that day. So that's why I was trying to encourage him to eat something.
Right. Now, I just want to get your assistance then with, you've already made reference to this, but I just want to take you through some of the things Callum Tully has said and told us about things that you said to him about this period of time on the 4th and the 8th of May. Can we first of all, very briefly, go to a document, Chair, tab 6 for you, CPS 000025 at page 18. And again, it will come up on screen, Mr. Sanders. And what this is a BBC log, and what we're about to see are notes of what Mr. Tully clearly told the BBC when he was working undercover. And it's hard to make out because the typescript is quite dense. But if you cast your eye down to the first word of a sentence that begins Clayton, can you see that, where we see the name Clayton? And this is about the 4th of May, thank you, Zainab. Clayton said best way to handle him was what Yan did, forget that. Another officer said look away, hope find him swinging. That was Aaron, so nothing to do with you. But this is to do with you. This is a note that was taken or made about what Callum Tully recalled you saying, and we'll see that you did say this. Another officer talking about detainee banging his head. At one point grabbed his head, started doing it for him. Calvin Sanders, although spelling your first name with a C, not a K, not sure if bragging. And then on the next page, page 19 of this document, under Monday the 8th of May, in the afternoon, you see those words, Mr. Sanders, in the afternoon, had a conversation with Calvin Saunders, mistyped, who was saying that he had smacked an Egyptian detainee, believed to be D1527's, head on a table, twisted his wrist. So that is a note that was taken of what you said to Callum Tully. And he followed up that account by making a statement to the police on the 23rd of November, SXP 000120 at page 7. Chair, in the next tab for you, tab 7. And if we look halfway down, you'll see the date, the 4th of May. And then if we drop down to the next paragraph, beginning later the same day, I was on escort duty with DCO Stokes and DCO Sanders. Whilst we were all together, Calvin suggested he slammed D1527's head on the desk, bent his fingers back. And then he adds what Aaron had said to him during the course of that period of his duty. And then 4 days later, on Monday the 8th of May, whilst on duty, I walked into the office of C Wing, where a female DCO, whose name I don't know, and DCO Calvin Sanders were. I said I was with your mate the other day, referring to 1527. Calvin then said, I went out of the room to make sure no one was watching, And when he was banging his head on the table, on the bounce I went. And he then demonstrated banging his head on the table with his hand. At this point he paused and said he locked his hand or arm to stop him from doing it. He then demonstrated twisting D1527's fingers. Calvin went on to say that if you're self-harming, you're an attention-seeking little prick, or similar. It was as though he was bragging about what he had done. So with that in mind, please, Mr. Sanders, can we just look at the transcripts, 2 short transcripts we have of, in fact, what was said, and the first of which, Chair at tab 16, is at TRN 0000096. And if we go to the next page, we can expand that. So this is the 4th of May, Mr. Sanders, and you'll have seen some footage of this because some of this was broadcast, you'll remember, on the Panorama programme, which I'm sure you saw. And this is you. You know something's missed, inaudible, lockdown, when you, inaudible. I was sitting in his room, and no one else was there. I was on Constance. It was me and him there. He was being a right prick. He was trying to do that to his neck, and the square brackets indicate what the footage shows. Pressing index finger into side of neck. So after when he did that, I fucking just went like that, and the footage shows you squeeze the free hand around the index finger pressed into the side of his neck. And Tully says, what's the best way to deal with somebody like D1527? And Aaron Stokes, who was present, says, turn away and hopefully he's swinging, probably. And then you say, do you know what I'd do is, if he's fucking banging his head on the base of the bed as he's bent down, put my hand down and went, and you made a gesture with your hand, I think, on the head, boom. And then that results in laughter. Stokes says, what's that? And then again gesturing, pushing the head down. And towards the bottom, as the conversation continues, Aaron Stokes is gesturing in the way suggested in the square brackets. Did you not have the urge to just punch him in his face as he's gone up and bang? And he gestures a punch. And then 4 days later, on the 8th of May, Chair, in the next tab for you, different transcript for us, TRN 0000097 at page 2. And Tully's asking about whether that was after he was on the netting, and you say that was before. Because he was on, if we're talking about D1527, he was also protesting on the netting on the 4th of May. And you say he was on E-Wing, on Constance, and I was in the room with him. And normally you're sat across, sitting outside watching him. But I still couldn't see what he was doing, so I sat in there, on the table right next to him. Literally, I was talking to him and obviously looked around to make sure no one was looking. Banging his head, and as he was banging it, I went and you gestured with your hand slamming on the desk, held it right there. And he's trying to do that to himself, pushing his finger right in his neck. So I got his finger and thumb and told you, I stopped you doing it. And then with one hand, an index finger and thumb extended, and with the other hand you squeeze the index finger towards the thumb. And then there is some more conversation about that. At line 24, Tully says, yeah, I remember when you were down there. And indeed he did, as he was later to tell the BBC that he'd put 2 and 2 together and realised that you had been talking about the event on the 24th when Tully had seen you on constant observations with this man. And you say, because I was sitting on a table, weren't I? And he said, yeah, I remember seeing you, thinking, why does he look so chirpy on a constant? And you laugh. And then at line 39, You say, you know, I was saying to a mate, if you're going to do it, hurt someone, fucking hurt me. At least get your time's worth out of it. You know, hurting yourself, you're attention-seeking, aren't you, you little prick? Can't stand it. If you're going to hurt fucking someone, hurt yourself. Hurt like an officer, you know. Get to brag about it. Fucking, you know, I took a swing at him instead of fucking trying to hurt yourself, because hurting yourself is just fucking attention-seeking, going to get you nowhere. And then at line 46, haven't got any sympathy for any of them. Now, you'll agree, I'm sure, Mr. Sanders, that in both those transcripts, what you were telling Callum Tully and indeed others who were present was that during the constant observations, which has to relate to the 24th of April, rather than what the note says, you'd in fact gone in and assaulted him in two different ways. And what do you say about that?
Oh, what the note says, what the truth is. You know, the comments I made to the DCOs were just my attempt to try and fit in, because what the notes don't say is that the conversation before what I said was all led up to the recent CNRs that everyone had done. You know, and being new there, so you know, I was just trying to sort of fabricate some story in which, you know, make me seem more interesting to them. You know, and being on a constant Oz was the only sort of time that, you know, it's close to anything that they had done, you know. Yeah.
So, but first of all, it wasn't a control and restraint, was it? It was a constant observation. So the story you're telling has got nothing to do with the CNR, because it was constant observation.
I know that's what I'm saying, but it's a close, like, what I said wasn't even true. You know, I didn't do anything, you know. It's just like, it's a lie that I made up just to try and get people to like me. You know, I understand it's a mistake now, but what's done's done. I can't change that.
No, but let me ask you a couple of other questions. You say, for example, during the 8th of May, I looked around to make sure no one was looking. I mean, some might say, Mr. Sanders, and I'm sure you understand the point, it's one thing to make up a story, it's another to add unnecessary detail. And some might say that unnecessary detail was, when you're making up a story, that I looked around to see if anyone was looking. Do you take the point?
No, I take your point, you know, but I still stand by my story, you know. Like, I didn't do what I did, you know. If I was looking to hurt him, I wouldn't go out of my way to make sure that, he got to go to the mosque, which under consultation, no one's allowed to leave the wing. You know, whereas I'd spoken to the DCM, Strip Harvey, and had arranged that, you know, he was allowed to be taken off the E-wing to go visit the mosque so he could pray, which is clearly in my notes. Yeah. You know, I also arranged for new clothing for him to be worn because he had torn his up. Yeah. You know, so none of these are intentions of someone who wants to harm someone. You know, these are just lies that I made up to try and fit in with some people who weren't even, like, great people, you know, so...
Who I mean... It's hard for anybody to understand, though, why, in order to fit in, you had to make up a story of you who had, as you say, you'd only really started a couple of months before, what the need was to make up stories like this.
Again, it's like it was the nature of the conversation that people were, like, talking about prior to me saying that, you know, so I felt I had to make up something similar just in order for them to sort of pay any interest in me.
But when you say it was the nature of the conversation that people had before that compelled you to make up a story or make up a story, the conversation before must have begun on the 4th of May.
Now, what I'm saying is like, in the event, as in that moment in time when people are talking, like, as in, like, seeing me saying that,
yeah,
the officers that are around me,
yeah,
they're swapping stories of all the things that they've done. So
yeah, I get that. But why did you persist in the story 4 days later on the 8th of May?
Because it was two different officers. It was
because
different officers. You know, I was just like, again, the same principle happened. You know, speaking to different officers, they're swapping stories, and then I use that same one to sort of like go on the basis of, you know.
I mean, well, when you said, as we saw, with the transcript we have up on screen from lines 39 to the bottom. This is the 8th of May one, about being an attention-seeking little prick. Was that your view, or was that something you made up as well?
Something I made again. I don't feel like that at all because my brother's killed himself, from suicide. So that's not my views at all. Again, it's just me acting the way everyone else would. It's like because it wasn't just me who said those things because everyone else was saying it. So
Had you heard others talk about vulnerable detainees as attention seeking?
Yeah.
So you're saying you were really just running with the same ball, right? And what about having no sympathy for them? Where did you get that from?
Again, it's like I was just fitting in. It's just like I don't know. It's just like it's hard to recall exactly why I did it back then. But it's just like the only attempts I had is like even if you spoke to some detainees I had contact with, I was never aggressive with anyone. I'd never hurt any of them.
No.
I only ever had one CNR, and I was in as a planned removal, so that was completely planned in a safe environment. So it's not like I've had any sort of real experience in it.
No, but had you heard other DCOs or
many,
DCMs? Just hang on a second, Sandra. Just listen to the question. Had you heard any other DCOs or DCMs saying, "I've got no sympathy for them"? Had you heard those words from others? You had. Can you remember any names of people who used those words or regarded detainees as attention seekers?
No.
You can't remember any.
No.
Now, I'm not going to take you to it. It's a document that we have seen many times. It's the Professional Standards Unit Investigation Report, CJS 11001107. Chair, it's at your tab 10, but I'm going to save you, Mr. Sanders, having to go through it. But you may remember, I say you may remember, maybe you don't, but do you realise the PSU found against you on the balance of probabilities? In other words, they said they found it more likely than not that what you were saying here was the truth. What do you say about that?
Well, that's their views. I know what I didn't do. I know what I did do. And all I can say is that I didn't assault that detainee at all. The moments I said that I was banging his head down, in reality, actually, I was placing a pillow under his head to stop him hurting it.
Yeah.
And rather than using restraints to remove his hands, I actually, like you were a child, just try and pull his hands away. So no restraint techniques were used.
One of the other things you said in this transcript was, in that long answer or long speech you made at line 39, I was saying to a mate, if you're going to do it, hurt someone, fucking hurt me, at least get your time's worth out of it. Hurting yourself, you're attention seeking, aren't you, little prick? Can't stand it. If you're going to hurt fucking someone, hurt yourself. Hurt like an officer. What was the point of all of that?
I don't know. This is I never even said that to the detainee. So I don't know what my thought process was behind that. Cause I can't think to how I was thinking back then. But I never said that to detainee.
No, but well, what it suggests is you're saying to the other officers who are listening to you that, in other words, make it worth it. If rather than hurt yourself because you're attention seeking, hurt one of us and make it worth your while. Do you not think that's the kind of thing that was the intention behind what you were saying at that point?
No, I can't remember why I said what I said in regards to that. All I know is that is not something I even said to the detainee. No. It's like I had no intention to hurt him, never hurt him. I made out I did what I did to the colleagues, to try and fit in. But that was the only reason that story was made up. Was to try and fit in. Even that failed.
And so that we understand, when you say, and you've said it several times, try to fit in. When you say fit in, are you talking about trying to fit in with what you tell us were previous conversations about CNR, or do you mean more widely trying to fit in with a toxic culture at Brook House of physicality and this kind of conversation?
It's not just trying to fit in with it, like toxic. It's just trying to fit in general. It's like have people just feel like make friends, like you would like at work, just like feel like people can like talk to you and stuff, or not even just about CNR, but in any day things, just to feel like you belong somewhere, or you've got people that you can relate to, and obviously I don't relate to anyone. It's just,
As a matter of interest, Mr. Sanders, do you agree, rather than say anything at all, saying nothing, would that have made you any less of a friend of these people, do you think? I mean, what was the necessity? That's, I suspect, what everybody's struggling to understand. What was the need to say this sort of thing rather than say nothing at all?
Well, it's like, again, it's like from my experience, trying to be myself has led in, like wrongly, people don't accept me for who I am, or if you get made fun of or bullied and stuff, so I feel like I have to become someone else or make them believe I'm someone else before people to even just become friends with me, and it's just
Yeah.
like,
So you were trying to be something you weren't?
yeah.
From your experience, and I'm going slightly away from the topic of these transcripts, and this is a question I'm asked to ask on behalf of others in this room. Do you accept there was a culture of dismissing self-harm and not taking it seriously, though, because staff thought these detainees were attention-seeking?
Yes, I do believe back then, obviously, self-harm was not as big of an issue as it should be.
In other words, not taken seriously? Yeah.
The real serious cases, as they were taken to hospital and that is dealt with like accordingly, but I don't think detainees had the proper help they should have.
Yeah, and we spoke a little earlier about your training, but that was focused on CNR. More generally, do you accept that whatever training you did receive while at Brook House, it was insufficient to prepare you to care for, which is what you said you wanted to do, to care for detainees properly within the general culture of that place?
Yeah, again, they teach you how to get physical, they teach you the laws and stuff, but they don't teach you how to actually deal with an incident, like not just physical but emotional. They don't teach you what to do in that event, it's just like...
Yeah. And one other question I'm asked to ask. First of all, were you ever aware of Home Office staff in the building?
I know they came in to do meetings and stuff. Of course, we had to. It's like a corridor or something. They had to come in to plead their legal case or something. I remember that much.
I mean, if you were either a member of the Home Office or, for that matter, the Independent Monitoring Board, the IMB, who would be in the building regularly, making statutory visits, does it surprise you if those people, Home Office staff, IMB staff, were totally unaware of the general culture of Brook House?
I don't understand the question, sorry.
If people who worked for the Home Office, who would work in Brook House, or those who made visits on behalf of the IMB members, looking around the place, just making sure that everything was working as it should do, IMB members, Home Office staff who were present there in the building, if they were to tell you that they had no idea about the culture of Brook House and the sort of problems that existed there, would that surprise you?
It would, yeah, because it's a daily occurrence.
Yeah. Do you think that the culture at Brook House, I mean, you said a number of things to the professional standards unit, which is in the document I mentioned, and for reference, paragraph 6.34, and paragraphs, in fact, going before that, 633 and 6.34. One of the things you told the PSU was, because you were one of those who actually spoke to the PSU for their investigation, didn't you? And you said, with a few officers, including Tully, that you were all swapping stories on CNR, so that's what you've told us, that you said you had said you'd hurt 50 and 27 to try and match them, to get the other officers to like you and to fit in, so that's exactly what you told us. And you said that during the conversation, the other officers didn't say that they had abused detainees, but they discussed how much of a fight a detainee had put up during CNR. Yeah, that's not in this transcript, so or either of the transcripts. So that must be before these were the previous conversations you're telling us about, are they? How they got the CNR over quickly and that they felt pumped. Was that one of the words you remember being told, how they felt pumped during CNR?
I remember one officer bragging about how he cut open a detainee's leg with a riot shield. But like that he had AIDS as well or something. I remember that him, like, an officer bragging that he cut open the detainee's leg with the shield during the planned
Who was
removal.
that? Do you remember?
No.
Sure?
Yeah, I'm
Don't
sure.
remember. And you remember telling the PSU that one officer from Tinsley House said he smashed a detainee with a shield. So you're talking about a Tinsley House officer.
Yeah.
One officer from Tinsley House
That's
said
the
he
same officer
smashed...
I'm talking about.
That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
Said he smashed a detainee with a shield, hit him so hard he cut his knee. And you told the PSU that you didn't wish to name any officers, but officers said they had done dumb things and stuff. And when they were the head officer, to get the detainee to stop squirming, they would squeeze the detainee's throat a bit. Do you remember somebody telling you that?
Yeah.
And again, I'll ask you, can you give us a name?
No, I honestly can't remember.
I mean, is it you remember but you don't want to tell us, or you simply can't remember?
I simply can't remember.
And to be fair to you, in your account to the PSU, this is paragraph 6.36 of PSU investigation report. You apologised for the comments you had made, that you felt stupid for making them, and you regretted making them. Do you remember telling the PSU that? And this is the final question on this I'm going to ask you. Are you prepared to agree, Mr. Sanders, that the reason you behaved or spoke in the way you did is because Brook House was, and I'm going to suggest this to you, you can agree or disagree as you wish, but Brook House was a brutal and dehumanising place for everyone involved, including staff members like you?
I agree.
Chair, I'm not going to ask any more. We have Mr. Sanders' dismissal record. We don't have to go through that. Perhaps one other question, though. No action was taken against you by the police, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Altman. I have no questions for you, Mr. Sanders. I know it's a difficult experience, and I'm very grateful for you coming and giving your evidence today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Well, it's 2:45, Chair. I think that is all the evidence for this week.
Thank you.
And so I'll invite you to rise, and we start again at 10 o'clock on Monday morning with more evidence.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you, Mr. Sanders.